Thank you. Oh, what a show we've got for you tonight. Tonight, we ask, why do you need a reading goal? How many books is too many? And how many is too few? And before we get started, I have a question for you. Type into the comments, how many books are you currently reading each year? When a friend got me into having a reading goal, she told me that Bush W read 100 books a year. I figured if he can do it. Now, I'm not saying that you need to set a goal each year, but it would benefit you to do so. What? But it would benefit you to do so as long as it doesn't stress you out. Reading reduces stress, but if you're stressed about reading, you lose that benefit. It's kind of like if you go keto, but you continue to down those whey protein gym shakes that spike your blood sugar. Are you really getting any benefit from putting yourself through that? I suspect no. And you don't need to commit to reading 100 books a year. There are many benefits to whatever size of goal you choose to commit to. I like to think of this in 3 tiers. At tier 1, you'll be reading more than the average person, probably 10 to 40 books per annum. Here, you will be confident enough to convince Twitter, now X, that you're an expert on whatever subject you choose to turn your hand to. You will have enough factoids and misplaced confidence at your fingertips to write a 10-post thread. Doing this, you'll also accumulate enough clout to subscribe some people to that Substack that you started 6 months ago. You know, the one that you posted to twice and haven't noticed that they've started charging you for. Your current subscribers, all 4 of them, will appreciate that you've reappeared, and don't worry if they're confused about the sudden change of subjects. Everyone knows that an expert in epidemiology can become an expert in Ukrainian-Russian politics overnight. But you don't need to read books in order to have supreme confidence in any arena. Saying words with authority is normally enough for what most people want to achieve. Dominant pointing and hand gesturing is also additive. Tier 2 is where you'll be reading a lot more than the average person. 40 to 100 books a year. Here, the benefits change qualitatively. Assuming you pick a book of substance and not just books that should have been a tweet, you will become more informed and capable of taking on your run-of-the-mill influencer on Twitter, now X. At this point, your desire to get into arguments on social media will fall off precipitously as you realise that the nuances involved require more than 140 characters. And more brain cells on your opponent's end. All is not lost though. Putting yourself through the grueling process of thinking about how you might convince someone of your argument, you will make yourself a better thinker. You just won't have a platform to tell strangers about how smart you are. Now, at tier 3, you'll be reading a metric shit ton more than the average person. Over 100 books per annum. If you're using this to expand your mind and to become a better thinker, the benefits start to fall off at this point. At this stage, you might briefly consider starting a podcast. Don't. Because by year 2 or 3 of doing this, you'll realise that there are people who are better equipped and qualified to talk about that subject area. By year 3, 300 books later, you'll be glad you didn't. Now, it matters what kind of books you're reading. Consider the type of book that you're reading and not just the number of them. Fiction, for instance, will train your brain in empathy. Readers of novels develop their imagination, and through reading stories where they put themselves in other people's shoes, they absorb cultural norms and explore moral questions. Reading is also good for your stress levels, reducing cortisol according to this paper cited all over the web. I haven't read it because for some reason it isn't available anywhere on the web. But I think I'm in good company, as I seriously doubt that the 10 people whose blogs reference it also haven't read it. Non-fiction of a certain calibre will train your brain in critical thinking, as well as potentially giving you the specifics to argue the point to yourself. However, having a numbered goal does come with a ton of benefits. For one, it forces you to get through a volume, even if you're bored with it, simply because you're focused on getting through the book. There are, of course, some instances where this just won't save you, and you have to learn to abandon those books that you're not engaged with. Having a number that you're shooting for also helps you develop a habit. The more you read regularly, habitually, the easier it becomes, the less daunting it is. The more you read, the better you get at absorbing new ideas and concepts. And with practice, your retention of information also improves. Now, as you progress through Tier 2, you'll build up ideas and concepts and start to see the patterns in everything. Everything is connected. Now, what would a YouTube video be without mentioning the trendiest of trendy neurotransmitters to add credibility to everything that I'm saying with supreme confidence? Dopamine, which means let's talk about dopamine. Every time you complete a book, you get a sense of completion. Dopamine. Feelings of progress and achievement. Dopamine. Not only is this reading habit healthier than playing video games, but you'll be spending quality time growing a factoid folder that you can shove down the throats of anyone who dares to discuss your chosen topic. Dopamine. Now, reading puts your brain into a focused state of mind. Reading is therefore a good exercise for teaching your brain to focus fast. I don't have any evidence for this, but since I'm wearing a suit and saying it confidently, I'm sure you'll be inclined to believe me. I find it easier to read when I use alpha state induction audio tracks, so I'm inclined to believe that it gives my brain an alpha state workout, making concentration in general much easier to get into and to go deeper when I have hard stuff to think about, like starting a podcast or taking over the world.
Gee, Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
It is therefore good for overall productivity. And if you're not convinced, let me use a sports analogy to be absolutely compelling. It's like if you're trying to run faster, a few sessions at the gym is going to grow the muscles you need on the track. Let's also remember that exposure to new ideas can help us make connections and generate ideas of our own. Some of my best ideas I develop as I'm reading. On the John. I just don't seem to get the same impact when I'm doom scrolling. Reading widely, even from authors I don't agree with or respect, makes me practice challenging my ideas of how I think things are. In doing this, the nebulous is sharp. So here's my suggestion. Try getting to Tier 2 rather than Tier 1, so over 40 books a year. This way, you get to read lots of different things which you wouldn't do if you were only reading a small number of books each year. With more reading opportunities, you can read multiple books on the same subject, which again, if you choose well, you can give yourself a better understanding of a topic and see it from multiple viewpoints. You'll learn to judge ideas and logic differently the more ideas you're exposed to. You get a better idea of history and where issues sit in it, and you get better orientated in the mass of disinformation and opinion. Just reading on its own, though, won't make you a mature critical thinker, but it can help if you select your material wisely. You need to adopt an attitude of being able to battle test your ideas and change your mind when presented with new information, and to develop models of the world that you're basing your opinions on. Now, this only comes when you consider and actively discuss the material and your thinking, and this is the hardest part. Of course, this is dependent on finding people who are also up for having what can be difficult conversations.
You boys won. Just playing a baseball game here.
Got no beef with you, sir.
And depending on where you live, this can feel futile.
Oh, good. For a moment there, I thought we were in trouble.
I challenge you to find people who don't hold your same beliefs, who you can talk to on a regular basis, and who have the capacity to respectfully consider ideas on their own merits.
Hans?
Have courage, my friend.
Yeah. Hans, I've just noticed something.
These communists are all cowards.
Have you looked at our caps recently?
Our caps.
The badges on our caps. Have you looked at them?
What? No. A bit?
They've got skulls on them. Have you noticed that our caps have actually got little pictures of skulls on them?
I don't,
Hans, are we the baddies?
You don't have to start at 100 books per year. You can start at any number you want and either build up or not. So what goal are you going to set for yourself? Leave me a note in the comments and commit to your new goal. Let me know how you get on. And coming up next, why I'm not reading 100 books a year. Stay tuned.